I just listened to every album by The Doors, and here are my thoughts. So, just a little bit of background on this. I really only knew one song by The Doors before going into this discography, and that song was "Break On Through to the Other Side." I took a month of vocal training, and my vocal coach had recommended that song as something that might be in my range, and that's how I know it. Surprisingly, though, I did not know any other songs by them. I think when I heard bits and pieces of like "Light My Fire" and "Love Me Two Times," then I had thought, oh, I think I heard that song before, but I didn't even know those songs very well. But I had a good time going through this discography. I feel like I'm going to have a little bit less to say about The Doors than I did the previous bands that I have gone through for two reasons. One, The Doors has a pretty short discography. Jim Morrison was a key member of the band, and he passed away pretty short into their career. The second reason is I feel like The Doors went through a bit less musical evolution than some other bands. I mean, the Doors are the Doors. Once I had gotten about an album and a half into it, I had gotten used to their signature sound, and although the songs were still good, there was unique enough beats and melodies to keep me interested. Of course, I still ended up feeling like, yeah, that is definitely the Doors. That is their signature sound. So The Doors starts off in 1967 with their self-titled debut album. A lot of people point to this as one of their best, if not their best, albums. It starts off with "Break On Through to the Other Side," which I still think is my favorite song by The Doors. It's unusually heavy and driven for their style, and it is no doubt a solid album. And it closes with my other favorite song by The Doors. So if I had to make a top five, my top five Doors songs, then "Break On Through to the Other Side" would be one, and then the final song off of this album, called "The End," would definitely be one of the other ones. "The End" is a long, dramatic, somber song that just sucked me in, and I revisit it pretty consistently. The following two albums, "Strange Days" and "Waiting for the Sun," were also good albums. There were two or three songs from each that I made sure to add on to my ever-growing classic rock playlist. The two albums after that, "The Soft Parade" and "Morrison Hotel," represented to me similar enough quality to the previous three albums, although maybe slightly declining. "The Soft Parade" especially, the only song that I'd added onto my playlist from that album was the title track, but "Morrison Hotel" had a couple of good songs, "Roadhouse Blues" being one of them. They come back, though, with the release of "L.A. Woman," and I'm finding amongst fans of The Doors that they either think that their debut album is the best or that "L.A. Woman" is the best. And I can definitely see why. "L.A. Woman" was a fantastic album. It closed off with "Riders on the Storm," which would be another top five Doors songs for me. And then after the release of "L.A. Woman," Jim Morrison passes away, leaving behind what seems to be a pretty embattled legacy from what I was reading. I mean, there's altercations with the cops, nights spent in jail, increasingly erratic behavior due to alcohol and drugs. But I can see why he's remembered as one of the best frontmen in rock. His voice is so unique. It's so one of a kind. And he was definitely essential to the presence of the Doors in their music. The Doors did not quit, though. They made two albums, two studio albums after Jim Morrison's passing. They start off with the release of "Full Circle," and when I was listening to it, I had initially thought they had requested auditions for basically Jim Morrison sound-alikes. The vocals on that album, I could tell it wasn't Jim Morrison, but it definitely sounded like someone doing a pretty decent imitation of Jim Morrison. But I found out right after finishing that album that they had not hired another band member at all. The band's keyboardist and guitarist had taken over vocal duties, and they just happened to sound a bit like Jim Morrison. Anyways, Other Voices was a decent album. It was a surprisingly pretty good album for the situation that they were in and trying to carry on without Jim. It was the one afterwards, their final release, that really lost me. The release of A Full Circle. It's a shame that it's their worst album because it has the best album cover. And you know, even if an album is really not great, even if an album is really bad, I try to add at least one song from it onto my playlist just so that it's represented. You know, an entire album, there must be at least one song that's good enough to add to my classic rock playlist as representation. This was one of the few that I couldn't add even a single song. I mean, props to them for trying some crazy new ideas, but I could not bring myself to add Get Up and Dance to my playlist. It was one of the lead singles from the album. It's also a song from the album called Mosquito, which was a hit in Mexico and South America due to its very Latin vibes. But that is it for The Doors, unless you count the release of An American Prayer, which I believe was released in 1978. This is not so much an album as it is comprised of some spoken word poetry that Jim Morrison had done before he passed away. This was not really an enjoyable listen. It is as pretentious as it sounds, possibly more so. But that does nothing to the legacy of The Doors and all the incredible music that they had released prior to Jim's death. So that's all of my thoughts. As usual, I'm gonna start loading up my favorite songs here at the end of the video. Oh, I almost forgot. There's my album ranking. So take a good long look. Forgot to make a note of that this time. Bye.
A day destroys a night, night divides a day. Try to run, try to hide, break on through to the other side. No surprise, the end. I'll never look into your eyes again. Love me twice today, love me 2 times, girl. Strange. Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game. He's walking down, was wiser. It's time to revenge. He asked her to give back. The old get old and the young get stronger. They take all we down and his wife gets home. Catacombs. Yeah, we're going to the roadhouse, gonna have a real. 'Cause I'm not really know without you. Oh, what can I do? I said, Warden, 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 won't you break? Are you a lucky little lady in the city of light? Or did you know the lost world were thrown like a dog